Hello, everyone. Welcome to our new Hardfire Media project we are calling Liberal Discussions. Hardfire Media Liberal Discussions. The idea comes from classical liberalism, which is based on free speech, freedom of religion, freedom to choose your own livelihood, freedom of movement, and equal rights under the law. These discussions are made available on our Hardfire YouTube channel, where we've made around 35 shows for the Brooklyn Free Speech Cable Network. Now that the brick is closed under the Great Suppression, we are producing our programming independently. My name is Cameron Weber.
I'm on TV.
I'm an economist and a historian and the producer of Hardfire Media. Today's topic is the C virus and us. This is an informal show where we share stories and observations about how COVID-19 or the novel coronavirus is affecting our daily lives. In essence, it is an exercise in popular history where we are reflecting on this situation as we are living through it. Now I would like each guest to identify themselves and say hello to our viewers, if and when we have any. So Greg will do it in reverse alphabetical order. So Greg will go first.
Okay, thanks, Cameron. It's Greg Smith here in Melbourne, Australia. Thanks for inviting me to join. I've taken a keen interest in your work, Cameron, and the show over a period of time, and through different discussions, we've talked about how these issues are impacting our different countries and economies and societies, and I'm interested to share our experiences from Australia and understand a little bit more at a firsthand what happens and what you guys are thinking in the US.
Yeah, Greg, there was an article in the New York Times, May 3, no more Jenga and no more Amen as Asia adapts. In Australia, where's that? Oh yeah, as cities in Asia, Australia, and elsewhere get their coronavirus outbreaks under control, churches, schools, restaurants, movie theaters, and even sporting venues are starting to open. Is that true?
Not in Australia yet. We're just about there. I'll share with you some of the numbers later, just so you understand, could get a feel for how different the situation is here to where you guys are. But we're just about to start opening things in the next probably 2 to 3 weeks. So we're expecting the government to announce some reduced measures. So things are quite closed at the moment, but I think about to hopefully safely open up.
Yeah, the news here is I get my news from the New York Times, so you can believe everything you read in the New York Times. And Macy's. Have you ever heard of Macy's, Greg? Macy's.
Oh, of course, yeah. I visited there when I was there, yeah.
Yeah, well, you stayed here. You stayed on this couch for like 2 weeks or something, right?
That's right.
But Macy's has stores in 23 states, and they're going to be opening up their stores over the next 4 to 8 weeks. So that's the Macy's indicator, 4 to 8 weeks in their stores.
I think that's probably along the same lines as here. When the New York Times speak of Asia generally, there some of the biggest cities in Asia were ahead of us in terms of COVID-19 taking off, and seem to have been able to lock things down and minimize the spread. So they're probably 4 weeks ahead of us in Australia, but we're well ahead of you guys, and I'll share some figures later because it's quite dramatic.
You're from Indonesia or something, Greg? You have an Indonesian background?
Oh, I have a great grandfather from Indonesia.
Yeah. Okay. Next, Francisco's not here. He's grocery shopping. He'll be joining us later. Derek.
Well, I'm Derek Sacerdote. I'm a free market libertarian, and I specialize in the off-grid lifestyle. And my angle here is how the economy, how the gig economy especially is adapting to the new reality, and how entrepreneurs are modifying their business model to adapt to the new situations.
Yeah, you are a digital entrepreneur, right? You get paid $5 for every mile you ride your bicycle or something, you calculate.
Approximately, yeah. You're alluding to the Eats platform?
Yeah, well, maybe just explain how you figured out that you get paid $5 a mile to ride your bicycle.
Well, I use the Uber Eats platform in the evenings sometimes, and since COVID-19, the demand has increased tremendously,
Right.
because restaurants are closed to dining in, and people, because they're afraid to go out, there's a lot more delivery demand. And the way all these apps like Uber, Grubhub, Seamless, they are demand based. So the pay rate is based on demand.
Right.
So what I did is I measured the mileage and the hourly rate by bicycle, and it was to about $5 per mile. The last time I checked it.
Yeah.
I made $37 per hour delivering food.
Nice.
Last week, which is pretty good for considering what it is.
And that's slightly above the unemployment check that you would be receiving. So you don't want to quit and get the unemployment check. Oh no! I tell you I was gonna hire our director, and then I was gonna fire her, and then so she could get unemployment.
You didn't.
No. What'd you say? Off-grid economy? What'd you call yourself, Derek?
Yeah, the off-grid lifestyle and the gig economy.
Off-grid lifestyle, and then we have Bradley. Bradley, who are you?
Who am I? I'm here in Queens, New York.
Yeah.
Here in New York City, primarily a constitutionalist and a civil libertarian.
Yeah.
And my concern about the whole issue is the encroachment on our civil liberties that's happening right now. Even though people are giving up willingly and there is a necessity for it, we're still on a slippery slope when we're starting to give up our constitutional rights.
Yeah. And Bradley, there's something about Elvis Presley that, do you want to share a story about Elvis Presley or no?
My mother had a date with Elvis Presley. Is that what you're alluding to?
Wait, your mother went on a date with Elvis Presley?
Back in 1954, yes.
Oh, wow.
And what year were you born?
In Columbus, Ohio, and needed a pretty single female, and my mom fit the bill, and she got to spend the day with Elvis. So,
but you weren't born until 1960.
No, this is I think this is like when his first album came out. He was still doing "That's All Right, Mama" type of stuff. It was long before it became super famous. So.
And that one song, Milk Cow Blues, or what song is that?
Yeah.
Put that together, yeah. Okay, so that's who we are, and then Francisco has yet to join us. C virus and us is the topic. 5th of May, 2020. This says the novel coronavirus, and we and us in Mandarin, I guess, means the same thing. Yeah. And so my question is, who is us? And I don't know if you can see this. Let's hold it up here. After 13 weeks, 98% of Americans have not been tested. Many people have no symptoms but can still infect others. During World War II, the federal government was able to build a fighter plane every 7 minutes. Yay, Team America. We are at war again. The federal government fights wars. The states don't. Bradley, you said you're a constitutionalist. I don't know what your take is on that. I'm an anti-constitutionalist myself. I believe in the Articles of Confederation, states' rights. We need.
I believe in states' rights over federal rights. Yeah, I definitely do that as well. So.
Yeah. So we need a national testing program with the resources and coordination of the federal government. Please do your job, Mr. President. The World Health Organization declared a public health emergency on January 30th. As of April 28th, we have only tested 5.6 out of 328 citizens. Full page ad, New York Times. How much does that cost? I don't know, $50,000 or something. So we all know about the WHO, right? The WHO, who
Won't get fooled again.
oh yeah, they're the ones that kind of did a good job by welding people into their homes, those who were sick. Yeah. So that's our show. And I don't know exactly what this says. Groups cannot play together. When we got kicked off the tennis court, Xiaoxi and I were our director, we were on the tennis court. We got kicked off the tennis court. And just 2 days ago, there was, we walked to the tennis court, and there was one person alone playing on the tennis court, not a group. And there was a police car there and a police car there with lights blaring and 5 policemen and this little Mexican guy that the police were chasing off the tennis court, even though he was all by himself. Okay. So I was just ranting a little bit.
There's a lot going on. There's the civil liberties aspect, the actual public health aspect.
Yeah, that's what we talked about last time, the big trade-off between the health concerns and the economic concerns. Yeah.
And I think there may be a false dichotomy there.
Uh-oh. Yeah. And so French utilitarian, to continue on with the French utilitarianism describes human action as that of movements towards relieving anxiety and angst. We hope that this show will help us move us towards this direction. Everyone's story is unique and their own, so let's get to it. I just showed my shared my tennis court metaphor. Yeah.
Cameron, if I could perhaps just share some of our experiences in Australia, because they're quite different to the US, and I find it interesting why we're so different when, to some degree, culturally and economically, we're very, very similar. But the way people view and handle things seem to be quite different. But the scenario is a little bit different. I'll just give you some numbers here. So in Australia, we've only had 6,847 cases registered so far, and the vast majority of those people have recovered. And we've only had 97 deaths, and that's as opposed to, I think the US is running at about 1.18 million and 68,000 deaths and rising.
I think we have how many dead right here in New York? 60,000? How many?
60,000, yes. Mm-hmm.
Which is larger.
That might have been the New York figure, yeah.
Larger than my own.
Obviously, we're a much smaller country with a smaller population. We're only about 25 million. So, the scale is much less. But even so, the lockdown here happened, and I think it was more good luck than good planning. We locked down fairly quickly. And we're down to only about 25 cases per day, new cases, and only 118 in the last seven days. So people are starting to getting a bit apprehensive, saying, look, when can we get back to normal? And the government are holding fast, saying, look, we really need to lock down for a little bit longer because this could flare up very easily. But by and large, people seem to accept and respect that. We haven't had any protests, or there's not a lot of bad feeling building up against the government. People seem to be quite accepting in that respect, whereas from the news footage I see from your country, there's a lot of unrest, and a lot of people are questioning whether the lockdown should continue.
Greg, you're a royalist, right? Like a royalist. Don't you have the Queen on your money?
Oh yeah, we do. Yeah, well, I mean, that's a whole different topic. We had a Republican movement that had a referendum a few years ago, and it failed, unfortunately.
Wait, what failed?
We had a referendum on whether we should still be, whether we become a republic and not part of the Commonwealth.
Oh, and you said it failed, unfortunately.
Well, most people here would like to see us as fully independent. The irony is, though, that it's very much, the Queen is just a figurehead and has no bearing and no control at all. She's just almost like an entertainment
Yeah,
for people here. But a lot of people want to break away. A lot of people sort of like the idea we're still connected to the British Commonwealth. So it's a bit of a 50-50 one. And the referendum at the time didn't quite get along the line. And that was probably 15 years ago now. So it's quite a while. And it's all that issue's sort of gone by the by. Most people are not passionate either way.
So just back to this. So Greg, and I know Derek, you received your $1,200 chicken feed, right?
Yes, just about days ago.
Yeah, and Bradley, you got your chicken
I
feed.
got mine about last week. Yeah.
And Greg, did you get any chicken feed from the nation state?
No, well, we're both retired now, so we live on our superannuation, which a lot of Australians do. So
And
we're sort of self-funded retirees, so we're not entitled to anything.
what's the superannuation? Yeah, you have to vote, and you also have this very interesting retirement system, right?
That's right. Yeah, compulsory superannuation. So an employer, by law, has to take a percentage of what they pay to a person and put it into a superannuation fund. So that's even if you're a casual worker, you might only be, you might be a college student. That money is put away. I can't remember the percentage at the moment. I think it's about 7 or 8%.
And you choose what fund, what investments that money goes into?
Yeah, you have the flexibility to do that. At one stage, the employers would put it into a fund that they had a relationship with. But what happened was, as people had lots of different jobs during their careers, they ended up with like 10 or 15 or more superannuation funds with small amounts of money. So now if you've got a fund, the employer needs to put it into the fund that you're in. And there are a lot of industry, not-for-profit members funds. So if you were in the hospitality industry, you'd most likely choose one of the hospitality industry funds, and that would be your fund for your career until you eventually, when you turn 60, you can turn that into a pension.
What if you're an independent punk rock musician like the Saints, right? Greg, Chris Bailey and the Saints, and then what's their superannuation?
Well, over the years, they wouldn't have had much. Now, if I was a musician now, and I probably would have to be registered as a business, in which case I'd have to put some of the money into a fund as a self-employed person.
And so here's just, this for the historical record. Here's the United States Treasury, $1,200.
Oh, well, you actually got a real check. Huh.
Economic impact payment, and there's the name of our current elected official, who's put on all the trade barriers and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and then here's this is from Kyoto. Here's this is called from the Kyoto National Museum of Modern Art, boy feeding chickens. And
That's pretty commercial these days.
And there's the boy feeding the chickens. Yeah. Okay. So, and Greg, voting's compulsory in Australia, right? You have to vote. What happens if you don't vote?
You'll get a fine.
How much?
You'll get a fine in the mail.
How much?
Oh, I think it's only $100 and something. But experience with that is that if you've got any sort of a legitimate excuse, you'll get off the fine. So you could, I think in most cases, if you were to say I was sick or I had to look after a person in my family and I couldn't attend, they would let you off. So it's not something I mean, on one hand, people do vote, and they bother to do it, and they're fairly committed to it here. I think I mean, people don't vote just because they're going to get a fine. Most people here are interested and engaged in the process.
Just like when we
It's a bit of a habit, really. I mean, we've always had compulsory voting, so
Greg,
people don't sit around.
just like when we were living in Kazakhstan, when 99% of the people would vote for 99% voted for Nazarbayev, right? Or is it?
Yeah, well, not only was voting compulsory, but voting for the president was pretty much compulsory, I think.
Yeah, and then you'd ask the employees inside the embassy, "Did you vote?" And they're like, "Yeah, of course." And then you ask them outside, "No, I didn't vote." but
Don't tell anyone.
Yeah, but they told me it was nice. So speaking of a check, I didn't get a check, but I did get something else. I got, instead of the and I'm not deceased, so I didn't have to, if click on the thing to see. But I did get $1 trillion in the mail from the U.S. government, and that was awful nice of them to give me $1 trillion with Abraham Lincoln's picture on it. Everyone can see that.
Yeah, it's very good, isn't it?
Does that work in vending machines?
Huh?
Does that work in vending machines?
I'll make
It's worth well over $1 trillion with the Australian exchange rate too. So maybe you send it over to me.
Yeah, I'll make a copy and send it to everyone, and that'll be your payment for the show. How's that? Or I'll cut it in 4 or 5 if Francisco shows up. But you'll see that there's Abraham Lincoln on there, so it has to be real. He's the one. He's the one that wanted to free the slaves and then send them all back to Africa. Yeah,
with $1,200 in their pocket.
$1 trillion in their pocket
Each.
Yeah, and look how portable and easy it is to do that. Okay.
Well, interesting point there, Cameron. In Australia, the government brought in a payment called JobKeeper. So we have unemployment benefits.
Yeah,
and they are normally $550 per fortnight. But during this period, the government doubled that to $1,100 per fortnight. So there are people that didn't have a job before COVID-19 and still don't have a job. So that was increased because of it was perceived that things would be harder for them during this period. But people who, excuse me, who were stood down because of COVID-19 by their employer, are getting paid $1,500 per fortnight, and that's paid to the employer, and the employer must pay that to the staff member. The strategy there was to keep the businesses afloat and to keep the obviously employee with food and shelter during that period, but also so that when the restrictions are lifted, the employees and the businesses can hit the ground running. So that's been seen as very generous. There's a lot of money involved in that, of course.
Yeah,
but
you don't have
as a result of that, people are quite happy with the government's performance. The support for our government is probably for the party that's in power, which is the Liberal Party, which are a conservative party, but a very middle of the road conservative party. Support for them during this process has probably strengthened quite a bit, I imagine.
But you used the word lockdown, and did you use that as a pejorative or as something respectful, or?
Probably just.
Are you stranded?
Yeah, I think lockdown. No, we don't feel stranded. It's we feel locked down a bit at home, but we're allowed to go out and exercise and do essential stuff. So probably I'm using that term without it having any negative connotations.
Right. Yeah.
I think probably the point I'm trying to make is that by and large in Australia, almost completely, people are supportive of the government and supportive of the restrictions. We haven't had a lot of protests or backlash like I seem to have seen in coverage from the US that seems to be growing, at least in some of the states.
Yeah.
But just going back on that payment there, so those payments are per fortnight. So they're for this period. Whereas my understanding is with yours, it's a one-off one. So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
longer things go, the more stretched your $1,200 goes. I mean, you know what I mean? If it's 6 months, it's not much per week, is it? If it's 3 months, it's more.
No, Greg, we have, that's just the chicken feed. We actually have unemployment insurance as well that has been extended, and now there's so that it used to be the states would pay the unemployment insurance. Now there's a federal government top up to it, to where it's like $24 an hour or $50,000 a year, which is like the average salary. So a lot of people are just asking to be fired so they can just get that unemployment.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's quite generous, isn't it?
Generous. Well, you know why it's generous is because, we got $1 trillion. No worries, mate.
I think
plenty more where that came from.
That's part of the controversy on the so-called reopening of states and regions is relating to what you're talking about. The idea that there are people who want places to reopen for their own lifestyle comfort. For example, the ones who are complaining about, I haven't gotten a haircut, I want to go to the restaurant or the movies.
Like,
and then you have haircut. I mean, I feel like they kind of trivialize it by the way that the things that they're saying. But then you have the people who work at these establishments, who work in restaurants, who want to go back to work because the unemployment does not really come close to what they were making when they were actually getting at their job. But then there is this sort of hidden theory that there's a push to reopen these states because once a business fails, because let's say, for example, I open my restaurant back and people are afraid to come.
Yeah.
Then I failed because of the economy. Then and my workers lost their job because I couldn't manage my business. Therefore, unemployment benefits are not going to be coming anymore. So there's this feeling that maybe one political party is pushing it because they want businesses to fail naturally through market forces, and then they would not have that kind of responsibility to pay unemployment.
Yeah, that's
there's so many different reasons why people want places to reopen.
Believe it or not, we've used up 27 minutes already. We've already done 27 minutes. So here's Sweden. Their restaurants aren't closed. They didn't have a mandatory lockdown. They had something called herd immunity, meaning you get a little bit of the virus and then everybody gets sick. And this is from the Economist magazine. I read this thing. It says, why a study showing that COVID is everywhere in America is good news. So I said, what the hell is that? Why COVID is the good news? So basically what it is, it's 1 year's worth of flu in 1 month, basically is what we're going through. 1 year's worth of flu in 1 month. But does anybody have any last words? Thank you for watching Hardfire Media Liberal Discussions, C Virus and Us. Anybody have any last words before we check off?
No, thanks, Cameron. It's been great to share and exchange ideas with you guys.
Bradley, you hadn't had a chance to say much.
No, I've been listening. It was very informative. About Australia.
All right.
I think what we should possibly reframe the economic side of it as a time of transition more than a suppression. That is a time when when all businesses have to change their model significantly to adapt to the new reality more than a suppression. And those who can do that more rapidly will get back to a normal sustainable phase more rapidly than those who cannot.
Yeah, but you've been able to
Definitely
stay employed and earning money, Derek, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's probably because of the kind of work that I do is somewhat pandemic resistant.
Well, you're
people want, handyman work. People are going to want stuff delivered. People are going to want demolition done. People are going to want that kind of work regardless.
Yeah. And you don't need
It's a strong feeling of transition here in Australia, I have to say.
All right. So thank you for watching Hardfire Media.
Okay.
All right. So we'll see you same time next week. And we'll talk about what's essential services and who decides and how and why. Talk about that next week.